Welcome back, it's Kyle with All in Survival, and today we're going to talk about a Minuteman loadout. Alright, so welcome back to the channel. It's been a little while since I put out a video. I had done a conclusion to the playlist that has to do with tech gear, and I had also did a video that talked about why you might want to have such a gear. And as I was finished up with most of my tech gear, I started thinking about how do I want to store this? Do I want to just throw it in the closet, bring it out when I go to the range and train? Do I want to have it ready to go in case something happens? Do I keep loaded magazines in it? All of those things, right? How do I store this? And I started to think about, why do I have this gear in the first place, right? It's a long tradition in this nation that we have a citizen soldiers, right? I was a citizen soldier. I was a volunteer active duty, and then when I decided not to be active duty anymore, I became an active guard member, and I did that for many years in several deployments with the Guard as well. That made me a citizen soldier. My job was to follow the lead of my government, but most specifically, my governor. So when I got out of the service, I started having gear that I could use at the range and protect myself and my family, my community, my neighborhood, my state. As time progressed, I started thinking about what type of kit I would like to have if I could go out and slowly purchase whatever I wanted to. And I started putting money towards that stuff. Now, the long history we're talking about, almost 100 years before the formation of the United States of America, the colonists had small communities all over the place. And in their bylaws, they talked about having militias. Militia was anybody from 16 to 60 that could pick up a weapon, a rifle, a flintlock rifle, and defend their community. Within that realm of militia, there was a specific type of young man, usually under 25 years old, without a family, without kids and a wife, and they were among the best of that overall militia, and they were selected to be Minutemen. They needed to have all of their kit ready to go at a minute's notice. And what did these guys usually have? Well, they had their flintlock rifle. They had a very capable rifle for that time period. That's pretty important because everybody talks about, well, the weapons have changed so much. Technically, they haven't. They're still shooting with gunpowder, and that's not a lot of change for the last few hundred years. So they had their rifle. They had a knife. They had a backpack. They had a wool blanket. They had 3 days worth of provisions. They had all of their ammunition on them. They needed to have a sword or a large knife, a cutlery of some sort. This kind of morphed into your bayonets, and they needed to be ready to go at a moment's notice. So 100 years had gone, and some of these traditions had kind of faded away. They were still there, they were still in the laws, and you still kind of needed to have your weapon and be ready to defend your area, but they kind of fell out of favor. With good times, people stop feeling like there's a necessity to be prepared for danger. That's kind of what we're doing right now. It's only been 120 or so years since our nation has seen major prosperity, safety, and all of these wonderful gizmos and gadgets and new inventions. But if you think about the drop in the time bucket, 120 years. So 100 years had gone by, and in 1774, Massachusetts legislator decided that there was a possibility of war brewing on the horizon. What did they do? Well, they reinforced the time-honored tradition of the militia, and they reinforced the Minuteman. These guys who became Minutemen, well, they trained 2 days a week, and they trained in the exact same arms, using the exact same military manuals as the British did. Why? Because they were always looked down as a ragtag bunch of, country folk, and they needed to be a professional military unit. Well, only a couple of years had gone by, and in Concord, the alarm went out, and 4,000 Minutemen showed up on the first day of the siege of Concord. Within the week, 20,000 more people showed up, and that was the start of our American Revolution. Now, fast forward, these guys who set that into motion were patriots, obviously, and they saw something that most governments would notice as kind of a scary thing. The power relies in the people. It's not in a standing army. The power relies in the people. And while creating our document, the first thing they said is, you should be able to say almost anything you want, as long as it doesn't hurt somebody else. And the second thing was, you should have a firearm, right? If you want to keep number one, you better have number two. Now, it's been almost 300 years. And in the last 100 years, we've had a lot of safe times, a lot of prosperity, and a lot of excess. We have an unhealthy, overweight population because they've had such great times. And I'm not bagging on that. That's just reality. But we have to remember that you just have to look across the oceans in different directions, and you can notice that safety can go away that fast. It can just gone. And you need to be ready. You need to be strong and fit and capable with your gear, right? So I have been thinking a lot about how to protect my family, my neighborhood, my community, and my state and my country if I needed to. Now, I'm not a young man. I have a lot of knowledge in my head, and I have bled and sweat and done some terrible things for my country. That doesn't even matter anymore. Now it's all about me and my family. And that's really important. You have to really pay attention to those feelings. If you feel like there's a chance that things could go south and it might be you against the world or your family against odds, the crazy odds, then you should be preparing, right? What does a modern Minuteman need? What could a modern Minuteman take into a current modern battlefield, let's say? And this is hypothetical. There is no such thing as a modern battlefield here in the United States as of right now. Okay? So let's just keep all the drama to the minimum, and let's just talk about. Now, if you go back to tradition, we are training and using the same type of weapons that our current military is using. That's right. We should, and if the Second Amendment would have worked the way it was supposed to, we should have had the ability to carry the same weapons as the current standing active army in our nation. We are supposed to be the backup for them and a check and balance against a government gone rogue. Now, political stuff aside, we are being told that we can't have certain things and we can't do certain things. We can't say certain things and we can't go places and whatever, right? We can't do what we used to. We don't have the same rights as we used to. But you still have access to certain things. And we're going to talk about them a little bit. All right. I'm probably going to break this up into 2 different parts because I can already tell that it's a passionate subject and I'm probably going to get slightly long-winded. Now, you've seen most of this gear in previous videos, and you can go back and look at the gear specifically, but we'll talk in general terms. All right? If you want to train and prepare yourself in the same tactics and moves and strategic, planning and all that the active duty does, there's a lot of work to be done. All right? It's going to start right here with the modern battle belt, okay? And you need to have a good quality full-size pistol, okay? Nothing you're concealing under t-shirts and little stuff. You need a full-size gun, right? For a full-size fight, you want a full-size. You need a little bit of extra ammo. A couple magazines, a couple for the AR, one for the AR. Some medical and an extra light. I have the medical and I have 2 different tourniquets on this one right here, right? That's step 1. Step 2 is you need to have a modern rifle, right? You need to bring it into today's age, and you need to spend some time and really get to know and love your girl, right? This thing potentially could save your life or get you killed if you don't spend the proper amount of time. Now, I'm not going to get into what's on the rifle, but it needs to be a general, what a lot of people would like to call a recce rifle. One that is okay in a wide variety of situations. You don't want to be the guy who has to carry 2 rifles because you had this little tiny short rifle and you couldn't reach out past 100 meters to hit anything. And then you had to carry some large, long 20-something ounce rifle. So get something in the middle, something that you can use in generalized terms. The next thing I would say that's really important to have is some kind of an overkit, right? Some kind of, they called it many things, the H harness, it doesn't really matter what brand you get. You could get the old school tactical vests. The honest answer is that you need to be able to carry at least 2 to 8 more magazines, depending on what's going on, and some medical. In this particular kit, I have a small monocular, I have a compass, and I have a pretty large medical. There's an IFAK in here and a couple of extra Israeli bandages. This pouch, if I decided I needed to go and start using communications or comms, I would probably empty this out and put my radio in there. All right? Nothing fancy. Just a way to hold your gear, right? And if you're going to have the ability to use comms, a radio, right? I keep them in these bags because you never know when a solar flare or an enemy could use an EMP or something like that, and you would fry your electronics. So if you want to have them working when you need them, store them in Mylar bags. Okay, the last thing I'll say is that you need a resupply of ammunition, right? This is a pretty easy, this is what they used to give us in the old school. You kill 6 extra magazines, you throw it over your back, and you're good to go. But those are the basics, right? Those are what you need to get started. To move on and take it to the level where you are in line with what the active duty is currently doing, you're going to need to move to a plate carrier and keep it light. You're not a professional soldier. You're also not a professional athlete. And most professional soldiers, in my opinion, are as close to professional athletes as you're going to get. And you would be absolutely shocked at the stamina and strength of the little tiny Lance Corporal in the Marine Corps, or the 11 Bravo in the Army who's coming right out of high school. These guys can go and go and go, and you, as a citizen soldier, should keep it as light as you can. Just saying. Okay. You move to having plates, right? There are some really light plates on the market, but those plates also will take one hit, and at that point you should be throwing them away. Since you are your own unit and you are your own resupply, I would suggest that you go with steel. Just a suggestion, steel will take many more hits and break all your ribs before it actually punches through. But it's important that they last forever. You would just have to get a little stronger. And lastly is going to be a ballistic helmet, right? You can take this in many different directions, but there are no active duty militaries on the face of this earth right now that do not use ballistic helmets. So to say that there's no value in having a ballistic helmet is ludicrous. There are many different upgrades, and they are not cheap, but you tailor it to your own needs, right? I've talked about modularity a million times when we talk about tactical gear and being able to step up and step down on how much ammo, how much food, how much water, and all of those different things. In just a minute, I'm going to go ahead and remove all of this stuff, and I'm going to bring some stuff, and we're going to talk about the last section of a Minuteman. First, you need to shoot, move, communicate, and sustain, right? So you can't walk into a battlefield with this particular stuff and think that you're solid and good to go. You've got no resupply. In this case, you've got no way to carry all your gear. So we'll go ahead and break for a second, and I'm going to remove this and bring in some other stuff, and we'll talk about sustainment. If you've gotten this far and you've noticed that it's getting long, I've decided to split this into two different videos, and the second one will be coming up right away.